Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to continue with the Rook Endgames and how to defend against a Rook and a Pawn with your own Rook. So in the last video we've talked about the frontal attack, which is when the king is cut off from the pawn. But today we're going to talk about the position where the king is not cut off. So like we said, if our king is in front of the pawn, then it should be a draw. In the last video I've shown you the Philidor position, which by the way also works in this position here. But if you're too slow or if your opponent was just too fast so you can't get into the Philidor position, then you can use the following defense. So the defense that we're going to talk about today is called the back rank defense or just passive defense. And remember this, it only works with rook and knight pawns, and of course also on the other side of the board. And we will see why it doesn't work with the central pawns and bishop pawns. So in this position black is on move, so it's a check and black has to move. For example, he moves to this c3 square. Well, here, as I said, of course you can get into the Philidor position by checking the king, and when the king moves, for example back, then you're in the Philidor position. Of course, you wait for him to do something. You just stand there with your king and do nothing. You move your rook on the third rank, and when he moves the pawn, for example, let's just say he cuts you, and when he moves the pawn, of course you go back and deliver a lot of checks from behind, and he basically can't win this. When he gets closer, of course, you can just attack the pawn, he has to defend it, and then you come closer with the king and take the pawn. So this is the Philidor position. I expect you guys to know this one. But the method we're going to talk about today is the passive defense. So the move here for white is rook to h1. So the name says everything. It looks very passive, and it is. So the point is that black can't actually, do anything. He can't attack you on the last rank with the rook because the whole rank here is protected. And what do you do with your king? You just stay on the same file as this pawn, you just stand there and you don't move. You just move your rook on the first rank and do nothing. So let's see what black can try here. He can move up with the pawn. You play rook to f1 for example. Now he can't be too fast and just play b2, because you can just play rook to f3 check, and now what? He's gonna have to move and you're going to take his pawn. So he has to be careful here and just don't play b2 too early. But it's not really important. I mean, it's still a draw. What is he going to do? The only plan that I see here is to play rook to g2, and when you move the rook again to do some sort of a check here. And this is the important moment. When he checks you here, you go into the corner, because if you go closer to the center, then this could be a bit risky, because as you can see, some ideas with rook coming there and checking you might occur. So just always go into the corner here and it should be alright. Because he doesn't have anything again. If he checks you, you just go there. What is he going to do? Actually nothing, so everything is protected. And just remember that if he plays b2 at some moment, you just check the king, and then he doesn't have these two squares to protect the pawn, he has to go somewhere, and you just take the pawn. Okay, so let's quickly see what happens with the rook pawns. It's really not a big difference. As you can see, we have a similar position here, but with the a pawn. Again, the back rank method is not the only method to draw the game, but it's a pretty simple and easy way. So black is on move, he probably checks you, and you have to go back. You just move to a1, because you know that you have to be on the same file as the pawn. Because when the pawn moves to this a2 square, you don't want to be under a check, so that's why you keep your king here. And now, okay, whatever he does, if he plays a3, you can just play rook to g1 and get into your position for a passive defense. And again, he doesn't have any chances. If he comes closer with the king, you can, either check him, but talking about the back rank defense, you can just play, for example, rook to h1, and again, what is he going to do? If he pushes the pawn further, you can just check the king, or you can even just stay on the same file and, on the same rank, sorry, and it's still a draw. So this is not a problem here. And if he checks you here on a2, it's still not a problem. You just go to this b2 square, and there's nothing to be afraid of. So let's see why the passive defense only works with these knight and rook pawns. Okay, so here, as you can see, I decided to put a central pawn on the board just to show you why this passive method doesn't work. Okay, so again, he's probably going to check you, and you'll have to go back to the same file as the pawn here. Now, if you play something, for example d3, what method do you have to use to draw the game? Checks from behind, of course. This is the Philidor position, and here you have to play rook to h8 to just draw the game. As you know, you know this position. You just start the checks from behind, and it's a draw. But let's see what happens if you try the passive defense. Well, you play rook to h1, trying to do your passive defense like before. And now he plays king to c3, he comes closer, and you just move your rook like you did before when the pawn was on the corner files. And now what is the problem here? The problem here is that this rook now has more squares here to go to. And why is this a problem? Because the rook now can just go to this a2 square and you can see the threat. On the next move he can checkmate you. What are you going to do? If you play your king to c1, of course this is checkmate in one move. And if you move your king there to e1 to avoid checkmate, he's still going to check you there. And when you move to this f2 square, he's just going to take your rook, and then, as you can see, he's going to promote to a queen with his pawn, and this is going to be over. So the rook here suddenly became very dangerous, just moving to the other side of the board, and this side of the board here was protected with the rook, but this side here is not. So he's going to use this side to either checkmate you or just win your rook. For example, if the rook was there and this would also just win your rook, it wouldn't be checkmate, but he just wins your rook. So that's why it's so important to use the passive method or the back rank method only when the pawns are on A, B, G or H rank. Because here black didn't have space to just move his rook there and try to checkmate you or just win your rook, because your king was standing there and there was no space to play rook to a1 because white's king would just take it. So whenever you see a pawn being on rook or knight files, you can go for the passive defense, but if it's not, just make use of the Philidor position and you should be able to make a draw. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.